Amelia reached the maintenance tunnels through a service entrance in the administration wing's basement, the electromagnetic pulse having bought her precious time but also created new urgencies. Her radio was crackling with excited reports from her team. The electromagnetic interference you generated affected the infected throughout the facility, Marcus reported. They've stopped their coordinated attacks and reverted to basic predatory behavior. How long? Amelia asked as she crawled through the newly opened tunnel passage. 15 minutes so far, but they're starting to reorganize. Whatever cognitive enhancement the virus provides, it's resilient. Amelia reached Sublab C in record time, emerging into a smaller but well-equipped research facility that smelled of disuse and recycled air. Her team had already arrived through the main tunnel system, and the portable synthesizer was humming with activity as Tom worked frantically to produce their potential cure. "Show me the data," Amelia said, activating the administrative tablet to review Tom's protein synthesis results. The protein Tom had isolated wasn't just interfering with viral replication, it was actively repairing the neural damage caused by V0 infection. In the tissue samples, dead neurons were regenerating, destroyed synapses were reforming, and normal cellular activity was returning to previously infected areas. It's like the protein acts as a scaffolding for neural reconstruction, Tom explained, highlighting specific data points. The virus creates damage patterns that follow predictable pathways. Our protein can reverse those patterns and guide healthy tissue growth. Sarah was monitoring infected tissue samples under high magnification. Viral load in treated samples has dropped by 60% in the last 2 hours. More importantly, the cellular death markers are reversing. But there's a catch, Tom continued, his expression grim. The protein synthesis is incredibly complex. Each dose requires approximately 4 hours to produce using our portable equipment, and we can only synthesize enough for one human subject at a time. Amelia did quick calculations. The final protocol had a 12-hour countdown once both authorization codes were entered. With Tom's synthesis rate, they could produce enough for maybe 3 human doses before the sterilization sequence completed. We need to test it on a living infected subject, she decided. If it works, we document everything and transmit the data to every remaining research facility we can reach. Where are we going to find a test subject? Marcus asked. The infected outside are too dangerous to capture, and we don't have anyone who's recently turned. Amelia had been dreading this moment, but she knew it was inevitable. I'll test it on myself. Absolutely not, Sarah said immediately. We don't know the side effects, the proper dosage, or the interaction with uninfected neural tissue. We don't have time for proper clinical trials, Amelia replied. If the protein works, I can document the effects and help synthesize more doses. If it doesn't work or has adverse effects, you abort the cure development and focus on transmitting the data. Tom looked up from the synthesizer. There might be another option. The facility's medical wing has isolation chambers for infectious disease research. If we could capture one of the less aggressive infected. Too risky, Marcus said. And how do we restrain an infected subject for testing without putting ourselves at direct risk? Amelia was already moving to the laboratory's medical supply cabinet. The isolation chambers have remote sedation systems. If we can lure one of the infected into the chamber and sedate it safely, we can conduct controlled testing. Sarah reviewed the laboratory schematics on her tablet. The medical wing is 2 levels up and heavily compromised. But there's a service corridor that connects directly to Isolation Chamber 3. I'll handle the capture, Amelia said, preparing a portable sedation kit. You continue synthesizing the protein. How long until we have a viable test dose? 90 minutes for a preliminary dose, 6 hours for a full treatment course, Tom replied. Amelia activated the final protocol interface on the administrative tablet. The screen showed her authorization code already entered, with a timer counting down from 30 minutes for the second authorization. She looked at Sarah. When I get back with a test subject, I need you to enter your authorization code. That starts the 12-hour countdown. If our cure works, we evacuate and transmit the data. If it doesn't, we make sure this outbreak doesn't spread beyond Helix. Sarah nodded grimly. Understood. Amelia gathered her equipment and moved toward the service corridor leading to the medical wing. The tunnels here were wider, designed for moving patients and medical equipment, but they were also more likely to be discovered by the infected. As she made her way through the facility's lower levels, she could hear the infected moving throughout the building above her. Their coordination was returning, but slowly, and their movements were still more erratic than the military precision she'd witnessed earlier. The medical wing's service entrance led directly into a sterilization chamber adjacent to the isolation rooms. Through reinforced windows, Amelia could see into the main medical facility. 3 infected wandered through the area, 2 wearing patient gowns and 1 in surgical scrubs. The one in scrubs caught her attention. It was moving more purposefully than the others, examining medical equipment with apparent understanding. It had retained enough cognitive function to be useful for testing, but not enough to pose the same level of threat as the security personnel she'd encountered earlier. Amelia activated the isolation chamber's automated systems. The chamber was designed to contain subjects with airborne infectious diseases, featuring independent air circulation, remote monitoring, and automated sedation delivery. If she could lure the infected into the chamber, she could safely sedate and test it. She activated the chamber's audio system, playing a recording of human voices to attract attention. The response was immediate. All 3 infected turned toward the source of the sound and began moving in her direction. The first 2 entered the chamber together, but Amelia waited. She needed the one in surgical scrubs. It would be the best test subject for determining whether the protein could restore higher cognitive functions. When the scrubs-wearing infected finally entered the chamber, Amelia sealed the door and activated the sedation system. Within minutes, all 3 subjects were unconscious and secured. She returned to Sublab C to find Tom making final adjustments to the protein synthesis. "First dose is ready," he announced. "It's not perfect, but it should be enough to test basic efficacy." "And the electromagnetic pulse effect?" Amelia asked. "I've been analyzing the data," Marcus replied. "The infected's enhanced cognitive functions appear to depend on some kind of bioelectric field generated by viral colonies in the brain. High-intensity electromagnetic radiation disrupts this field temporarily, but it regenerates within hours." Sarah looked up from her preparations. "That could be our secondary weapon. If the protein cure works for treatment, electromagnetic pulses could be used for temporary incapacitation." Amelia activated the final protocol interface. "Sarah, I need your authorization code. We're starting the countdown." Sarah entered her credentials, and the tablet displayed a new interface. "Final protocol active. Facility sterilization in 12 hours. Evacuation protocols recommended after 10 hours. They had 12 hours to prove their cure worked and evacuate the facility. Amelia took the synthesized protein and headed back to the medical wing, her heart racing with the knowledge that humanity's survival might depend on the next few hours. The sedated infected in surgical scrubs lay motionless on the isolation chamber's examination table, restraints securing its limbs while monitoring equipment tracked vital signs. Through the reinforced observation window, Amelia could see the creature's face, once human, now bearing the telltale signs of V0 infection. Pale, gaunt features, darkened veins visible beneath translucent skin, and eyes that remained partially open despite sedation, revealing clouded pupils. "Vitals are stable," Sarah reported through the intercom system. "Heart rate 62, blood pressure elevated but consistent with infection parameters. Neural activity shows the typical V0 pattern, minimal higher brain function, hyperactive brain stem." Tom was monitoring the protein synthesis equipment, while Marcus prepared documentation cameras. The portable synthesizer hummed quietly as it produced their second dose, while the first waited in a sterile injection system connected to the isolation chamber. "Before we proceed," Amelia said, reviewing the final protocol countdown, 11 hours 43 minutes and 17 seconds remaining. "We need to establish our testing parameters. What are we measuring for success?" Sarah consulted her tablet. Primary indicators would be reduction in viral load, restoration of normal neural activity patterns, and return of cognitive function. Secondary indicators include normalized vital signs and absence of aggressive behavior. Time frame for observable results? Amelia asked. Based on our tissue sample testing, we should see viral load reduction within 30 minutes, neural regeneration within 2 hours, and behavioral changes within 4 to 6 hours. Amelia took a deep breath and activated the injection system. The protein solution flowed through 4 tubes into the sedated infected, a clear liquid that represented months of research compressed into a desperate gamble. Injection complete, she announced. Beginning observation period. For the first 15 minutes, nothing happened. The infected remained motionless, its vital signs unchanged. But then Sarah noticed something on the neural monitoring equipment. I'm seeing increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, she reported. Brainwave patterns are shifting from the typical V0 profile toward normal human ranges. Tom looked up from his synthesizer. Viral load indicators? Dropping, Sarah confirmed. 20% reduction already, and it's accelerating. At the 30-minute mark, the infected began to show signs of consciousness. Its eyelids fluttered, and it moved its head slightly. But instead of the aggressive struggling they expected, its movements seemed confused, almost exploratory. Neural activity is approaching normal human patterns, Sarah said, excitement creeping into her voice. I'm seeing restoration of memory centers, emotional processing areas, even complex reasoning functions. 45 minutes after injection, the infected opened its eyes completely. But instead of the clouded, vacant stare of V0 infection, its gaze was clear and focused. It looked around the chamber with obvious confusion, then spoke in a hoarse but clearly human voice. Where am I? Amelia activated the intercom. You're in a medical facility. You've been very sick, but you're recovering. Can you tell me your name? The subject, she had to think of it as a person now, struggled to remember. David. Dr. David Shin. I'm a surgeon. But something's wrong. I remember being hungry. So hungry. And there were people, and I wanted to. He stopped, horror creeping across his face. Oh God, what did I do? David, listen to me, Amelia said gently. You were infected with a virus that affected your brain. But you're recovering now. We need to run some tests to make sure you're completely well. Over the next hour, they conducted cognitive assessments through the intercom system. David's memory was returning gradually, along with his professional knowledge and personal identity. More importantly, his aggressive impulses were completely gone, replaced by normal human emotions including remorse for his actions while infected. Viral load is down to 5% of original levels, Sarah reported. At this rate, it should be completely eliminated within 8 hours. Neural regeneration is exceeding our most optimistic projections, Tom added. Not only are damaged areas being repaired, but the brain is actively developing immunity to reinfection. Amelia felt the first genuine hope she'd experienced since the outbreak began. They had done it. They had developed a working cure for V0 infection. But as she looked at the final protocol countdown, 9 hours 22 minutes and 41 seconds remaining, she realized their success had created a new problem. We need to synthesize enough doses to treat the remaining infected at this facility, she said. How many doses can we produce before evacuation? Tom ran calculations on his tablet. At current synthesis rates, maybe 6 or 7 more doses. Not nearly enough for the estimated 40 to 60 infected currently in the facility. What about scaling up production? Marcus asked. The portable synthesizer is operating at maximum capacity, Tom replied. We'd need the main production laboratory, but that's heavily compromised. Amelia studied the facility schematics. The main production lab had industrial-scale protein synthesis equipment capable of producing hundreds of doses per hour. But it was also in the most heavily infested section of the building. There might be a way, she said slowly. The electromagnetic pulse effect. If we can generate a facility-wide electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disable the infected's cognitive enhancements, we could access the main lab safely. Sarah looked up from monitoring David's recovery. The emergency broadcast system has high-powered transmitters throughout the facility. If we could coordinate them all to transmit simultaneously at maximum power, that would require access to the main communication center, Marcus pointed out, which is even more heavily defended than the production lab. Not necessarily, Amelia said, reviewing the administrative controls on her tablet. Dr. Blackwood's administrative access includes emergency override capabilities for all facility systems. I can trigger a coordinated electromagnetic pulse from here. She navigated through the facility's control systems, locating the emergency broadcast network. Multiple high-powered transmitters were positioned throughout Helix, designed to maintain communication during disasters. If she could synchronize them all to broadcast at maximum power on specific frequencies. There, she said, configuring the broadcast parameters. This should generate an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to disrupt the infected's cognitive enhancement throughout the facility. For how long? Tom asked. Based on our earlier experience, maybe 30 to 40 minutes before they start recovering, Amelia replied. Long enough to reach the main lab and begin large-scale synthesis. Sarah was still monitoring David's recovery. Viral elimination is now at 95% completion. Full cognitive restoration appears stable. I think we can declare the treatment successful. Amelia looked at her team, exhausted, stressed, but for the first time in weeks, genuinely hopeful. They had proven a cure was possible. Now they had to decide whether to risk everything in an attempt to save the infected at Helix, or evacuate with their knowledge and hope they could establish production elsewhere. We take the risk, she decided. If we can cure the infected here, we prove the treatment works on a larger scale. That data will be crucial for convincing other facilities to attempt production. She activated the electromagnetic pulse system, watching as power levels built throughout the facility's transmitter network. EMP activation in 60 seconds. Everyone prepare for communications blackout and system disruption. Tom sealed the latest protein dose in a portable container, while Sarah documented David's complete recovery. Marcus gathered their research data and prepared backup storage devices. 10 seconds, Amelia announced, her finger hovering over the activation control. Through the facility's security cameras, she could see the infected moving through corridors and rooms with their disturbing coordination. In a few seconds, that coordination would disappear, replaced by mindless confusion. Activating now. The lights flickered throughout Sublab C as massive amounts of electrical power flowed through the facility's transmitter network. On the security monitors, the effect was immediate and dramatic. Infected throughout the building suddenly stopped their purposeful activities, many collapsing as their enhanced cognitive functions were disrupted. It's working, Marcus said, watching the monitors. They're completely disoriented. Move, Amelia ordered, grabbing the portable synthesizer components. We have maybe 30 minutes to reach the main lab and begin large-scale production. As they left Sublab C, David called out through the intercom. Dr. Chin. What about me? What about the others who were infected? Amelia paused at the door. We're going to cure everyone, David. All of you. I promise. But as they ran through the facility's corridors toward the main production laboratory, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep. The final protocol countdown continued relentlessly, 8 hours 47 minutes and 23 seconds and falling. They had less than 9 hours to synthesize, test, and administer a cure to dozens of infected subjects before the facility's nuclear sterilization system activated. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a darker thought persisted. Even if they succeeded at Helix, the outbreak had spread far beyond their mountain facility. Curing a few dozen infected was a proof of concept, but saving humanity would require a global effort that might no longer be possible. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today, she had infected to cure and a world to give hope. The main production laboratory was a vast space filled with industrial-scale biotechnology equipment, massive fermentation tanks, automated synthesis arrays, and purification systems capable of producing pharmaceutical-grade compounds by the kilogram. Under normal circumstances, it would have been a biotech researcher's paradise. Now, littered with debris and showing signs of infected habitation, it looked like an abandoned factory. But the electromagnetic pulse had worked perfectly. Throughout the facility, the infected wandered aimlessly, their coordinated behavior replaced by the mindless shuffling Amelia had expected from the beginning. They had perhaps 20 minutes before cognitive functions began returning. "Tom, get the main synthesizer online," Amelia ordered, connecting her administrative tablet to the laboratory's control systems. "Sarah, start preparing large batches of growth medium. Marcus, help me clear the workspace." The main protein synthesizer was a marvel of automated biochemistry, a room-sized machine capable of producing complex protein compounds with precise molecular specifications. Tom's fingers flew across the control interface as he uploaded the protein sequence data from their portable equipment. "System diagnostics look good," he reported. "The electromagnetic pulse didn't damage any critical components. I can have the first batch running in 15 minutes. Sarah was already measuring chemicals for the growth medium, working with the efficiency of someone who had spent years in production laboratories. "At full capacity, we can synthesize enough protein for approximately 50 doses per hour," Amelia calculated quickly. "The facility has an estimated 60 infected. If we can produce doses fast enough and administer them before they recover from the electromagnetic pulse." "We need a delivery system," Marcus pointed out. "Injecting 60 hostile subjects isn't exactly practical." Amelia was already considering alternatives. "Aerosol delivery. If we can convert the protein to an inhalable form and distribute it through the facility's air circulation system." "That's actually brilliant," Tom said, looking up from the synthesizer controls. "The protein is stable in suspension, and pulmonary absorption would be almost as effective as direct injection." Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "The air circulation system reaches every room in the facility. We could treat all infected simultaneously without direct contact." "What about us?" Marcus asked. "Will the protein affect uninfected individuals?" "Our tissue testing showed no adverse effects on healthy cells," Tom replied. "If anything, it might provide temporary immunity to future infection." Amelia accessed the facility's environmental controls through her tablet. The air circulation system was designed to maintain precise atmospheric conditions throughout Helix, with independent control over air composition for each section. By adjusting the mixture and activating emergency ventilation protocols, she could distribute aerosolized protein throughout the facility within minutes. "Do it," she decided. "Tom, configure the synthesizer for aerosol-compatible protein production. Sarah, prepare suspension medium for air distribution. Marcus, help me reconfigure the environmental systems." As her team worked frantically to prepare the large-scale treatment, Amelia monitored the security cameras. The infected were beginning to show signs of cognitive recovery. Some were examining their surroundings with more awareness, others were starting to move with greater purpose. "Electromagnetic effects are wearing off faster than expected," she announced. "We have maybe 10 minutes before they return to full coordination." "First batch will be ready in 8 minutes, Tom reported, adjusting synthesis parameters for maximum speed. Amelia finished programming the air circulation system, creating a distribution protocol that would flood the facility with aerosolized protein within seconds of activation. But as she worked, she noticed something alarming on the environmental monitoring displays. "The facility's power grid is showing instabilities," she said. "The electromagnetic pulse must have damaged some systems." Marcus checked the power distribution controls. "Main generators are operating at 60% capacity. Backup systems are compensating, but if we lose much more power..." "The synthesizer requires massive amounts of electricity," Tom added. "If power drops below 50%, we won't be able to complete the protein production." Amelia looked at the final protocol countdown, 7 hours 14 minutes and 32 seconds remaining. They were running out of time on multiple fronts. Power failure could stop protein synthesis, the infected were recovering their cognitive abilities, and the nuclear sterilization countdown continued relentlessly. "Focus on what we can control," she said firmly. "Tom, prioritize essential systems only. Sarah, prepare manual backup procedures. Marcus, monitor power consumption and shut down non-critical systems." The main synthesizer hummed to life, its massive fermentation tanks beginning the complex process of protein production. Throughout the facility, Amelia could hear the infected becoming more active, footsteps in corridors, voices calling to each other, the sound of coordinated movement returning. "They're organizing again," Sarah reported, watching the security monitors. "And they're moving toward this section of the facility. They know we're here," Amelia realized. The electromagnetic pulse disrupted their cognitive functions, but it also revealed our location by showing them where we weren't affected. "Protein synthesis at 40% completion," Tom announced. "Need another 4 minutes for full batch." Through the laboratory's reinforced windows, Amelia could see infected gathering in the corridor outside. But these weren't the mindless creatures she'd expected. They were moving with renewed intelligence, examining the laboratory's defenses and apparently planning their assault. "They're learning from the electromagnetic pulse," she said with growing alarm. "They're adapting to our countermeasures." "Batch completion in 2 minutes," Tom called out. "But I'm seeing power fluctuations that could abort the synthesis." Amelia made a desperate decision. She activated the facility's emergency power protocols, drawing electricity from every available source including life support reserves. The lights dimmed throughout Helix as power flowed into the protein synthesizer, but the synthesis process continued. "Synthesis complete," Tom announced. "Beginning aerosol preparation." The massive synthesizer began converting liquid protein into an airborne suspension, preparing it for distribution through the facility's air circulation system. But as the process continued, the infected outside began their assault on the laboratory. Unlike their previous mindless attacks, this was a coordinated military operation. They used shaped charges to breach reinforced doors, deployed electronic jammers to disrupt the laboratory's systems, and advanced with tactical precision that suggested retained combat training. "Distribution system ready," Sarah reported. "But the air circulation network is being manually disabled. They're cutting ventilation lines throughout the facility." "They know what we're planning," Marcus said. "They're preventing aerosol distribution." Amelia watched the tactical displays as the infected systematically disabled their delivery system. The creatures had retained enough intelligence to understand the facility's infrastructure and counter their cure distribution strategy. "Manual delivery," she decided. "We'll have to administer the protein directly." "That's suicide," Sarah protested. "There are 60 infected and 4 of us." But Amelia was already preparing portable aerosol dispensers, emergency equipment designed for chemical spill containment. "Not if we use the electromagnetic pulse to buy time." She activated the emergency broadcast system again, sending another coordinated pulse throughout the facility. The attacking infected suddenly stopped their assault, convulsing as their cognitive functions were disrupted. "Move now," Amelia ordered, grabbing a portable aerosol dispenser. "We treat as many as possible before they recover." Her team scattered throughout the facility, each carrying enough aerosolized protein to treat 15 to 20 infected. The creatures lay helpless on the floor, their enhanced intelligence temporarily disabled by the electromagnetic pulse. Amelia moved through the corridors methodically, administering the aerosol treatment to every infected she encountered. The protein mist was absorbed quickly through their respiratory systems, beginning the neural reconstruction process immediately. "First group treated," Tom radioed. "Moving to the next section." 13 more treated here," Sarah reported. "They're starting to regain consciousness, but the aggressive behavior is already diminishing." Amelia reached the facility's main lobby, where she found the largest concentration of infected, nearly 20 individuals who had been coordinating the assault on the laboratory. As she administered the aerosol treatment, she could see the protein taking effect immediately. "Final protocol countdown at 5 hours 47 minutes and 18 seconds, Marcus radioed. How much time do we need for the treatment to prove effective? Based on our testing with David, full cognitive restoration takes 4 to 6 hours. Amelia replied, treating the last of the lobby infected. We'll know if it's working within 2 hours. And if it doesn't work? Amelia looked at the administrative tablet showing the final protocol countdown. Then we evacuate and hope someone else can continue our research. But as she spoke, the first infected she treated began to show signs of consciousness. Like David, their eyes cleared, their movements became coordinated but non-aggressive, and their first words were confused questions about their location and condition. Dr. Chen, one of them said, a woman wearing the remnants of a laboratory technician's uniform. I remember you. I remember being so angry, so hungry. But that's fading. What happened to us? You were infected with a virus, Amelia explained. But you're recovering now. All of you are recovering. Over the next hour, they moved through the facility administering treatment to the remaining infected and monitoring the recovery process. The protein was working exactly as their tissue testing had predicted. Viral loads dropped rapidly, neural damage was reversed, and cognitive function returned to normal. More importantly, the recovered individuals retained complete immunity to reinfection. Blood tests showed their immune systems had developed specific antibodies that could neutralize V0 on contact. Amelia, Sarah called through her radio, excitement clear in her voice. You need to see this. The recovered infected aren't just immune to reinfection, their blood contains antibodies that could be used to create a vaccine. Amelia joined Sarah in the medical wing, where they were analyzing blood samples from the recovered patients. The data was extraordinary. Not only had the protein cure restored normal brain function, but it had triggered an immune response that could potentially protect against future V0 infection. We don't just have a cure, Sarah continued. We have the basis for a vaccine that could provide permanent immunity. Tom's voice came through their radio. Production systems are back online. We can synthesize enough protein for large-scale treatment, and if Sarah's right about the antibodies, we can develop a preventive vaccine. Amelia looked at the final protocol countdown, 3 hours 22 minutes and 17 seconds remaining. They had proven the cure worked, developed the basis for a vaccine, and restored 60 infected individuals to complete health. But they still faced the fundamental problem that had started this entire crisis. We need to contact the outside world, she decided. If other facilities exist, if there are other survivors, they need this information. Marcus was already working on communication systems. Most long-range communications are down, but I might be able to reach emergency frequencies. Military, FEMA, International Disaster Response. Do it, Amelia ordered. Transmit everything, the protein synthesis data, treatment protocols, vaccine development procedures. Even if we don't survive, someone else can continue the work. As Marcus worked to establish communications, Amelia began documenting their complete research findings. The protein cure was effective, scalable, and could potentially be produced by any facility with basic biotechnology equipment. More importantly, the antibody vaccine could provide permanent protection against V0 infection. But as she compiled the data, a disturbing thought occurred to her. They had cured the infected at Helix, but what about the millions of infected worldwide? Even with a working cure and vaccine, the logistical challenges of global treatment were staggering. Amelia, Marcus called, excitement in his voice. I'm getting responses. Multiple facilities, government emergency centers, military installations. They're still out there, and they're desperate for exactly the information we have. For the first time since the outbreak began, Amelia felt genuine hope for humanity's survival. They had not only developed a cure for V0 infection but had proven it worked on a facility-wide scale. The recovered infected were not only healthy but immune to reinfection. Begin transmission, she ordered. Send everything. Treatment protocols, synthesis procedures, vaccine development, antibody production, everything. But as data flowed out to the remaining bastions of human civilization, Amelia made another decision. She accessed the final protocol interface and began the abort sequence. What are you doing? Sarah asked, seeing the countdown timer. We're not evacuating, Amelia replied. We're staying. Helix has the production capacity to synthesize cure and vaccine in quantities that could treat thousands of people. If other facilities can coordinate with us, we can begin large-scale treatment operations. The final protocol abort sequence required the same dual authorization that had initiated it. Sarah entered her codes without hesitation, and the countdown stopped with 2 hours 47 minutes and 33 seconds remaining. New mission, Amelia announced to her team and the recovered infected who had gathered in the laboratory. We're not just survivors anymore. We're the cure production facility for everyone else who's still fighting this outbreak. Tom looked up from the synthesizer controls, where production indicators showed massive protein synthesis already underway. How much can we produce? Enough for 10,000 treatments per day once we're at full capacity, Amelia replied. And with the antibody vaccine, we can provide permanent immunity to uninfected populations. Marcus was coordinating with outside facilities through the restored communication systems. I've got requests for treatment protocols from installations in North America, Europe, and Asia. They're organizing coordinated distribution networks. Amelia moved to the laboratory's windows, looking out at the sunrise over the Colorado mountains. For 43 days, that sunrise had illuminated a world sliding toward extinction. Now it revealed something different, the beginning of recovery. The infected wandering through the compound were gone, replaced by confused but healthy human beings working to restore the facility's normal operations. In laboratories around the world, her research data was being analyzed and replicated by teams desperate to save their own communities. Dr. Chen. David approached her, his surgical uniform replaced with clean clothes from the facility's emergency supplies. Some of us were talking. We want to help with the cure production. We remember our professional skills, and we want to make up for what we did while infected. Amelia looked at the group of recovered individuals, scientists, security personnel, maintenance workers, all eager to contribute to humanity's recovery from the V0 outbreak. Welcome to the team, she said. We have a world to cure. Dr. Amelia Chen stood in the main laboratory of the Helix facility, watching her expanded team work with quiet efficiency to produce the 1,000th batch of V0 cure. The laboratory that had once housed 4 desperate researchers now buzzed with the activity of 60 skilled professionals, half of them formerly infected individuals who had dedicated their recovery to helping others. The facility's production capacity had grown beyond her most optimistic projections. Working in coordination with 43 other installations worldwide, Helix now produced enough cure and vaccine to treat 50,000 infected individuals per week. Global V0 infection rates had dropped from 90% to less than 5%, with new infections becoming increasingly rare as vaccine distribution expanded. Dr. Chen. Marcus called from his workstation, where he now coordinated global treatment logistics. We just received confirmation from the Australian facility. Tasmania is officially infection-free as of this morning. Sarah looked up from her immunology research, where she was developing next-generation vaccines for potential viral mutations. That makes 12 countries with 0 active infections. At current treatment rates, we should achieve global eradication within 8 months. Tom had evolved from protein synthesis to production engineering, designing automated systems that could produce cure and vaccine with minimal human oversight. The new synthesis arrays are testing perfectly, he reported. We can establish complete production facilities in developing regions within weeks instead of months. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation was in the recovered infected themselves. David had become Amelia's assistant director, coordinating medical operations with the precision of a surgeon and the dedication of someone who understood the true cost of the outbreak. Others had contributed their specialized knowledge to research, production, logistics, and global coordination efforts. Any word from the Beijing facility? Amelia asked, reviewing global production reports on her tablet. They've successfully synthesized the protein using local equipment, Marcus replied. Treatment operations begin next week. That brings our total network to 57 production facilities across 6 continents. Amelia moved to the laboratory's windows, looking out at the Colorado landscape that had become the epicenter of humanity's recovery. The Helix facility now bustled with activity: researchers, engineers, logistics coordinators, and recovered infected all working toward the same goal. But the view that caught her attention wasn't the busy facility or the mountain scenery. It was the children playing in the compound's courtyard, sons and daughters of facility staff, all vaccinated against V0 infection, all representing humanity's future in a world where the zombie apocalypse had become a medical condition instead of an extinction event. Dr. Chen. David approached with a communication tablet. We're receiving a transmission from the International Recovery Council. They want to discuss establishing permanent research protocols for viral outbreak prevention. Amelia smiled, taking the tablet. The International Recovery Council had formed from the surviving government and scientific organizations, tasked with rebuilding civilization and preventing future biological catastrophes. Their request represented something she'd never dared hope for during those desperate days in Laboratory 7, a world that had not only survived the V0 outbreak but had learned from it. Schedule the conference for next week, she said, and invite representatives from all our partner facilities. If we're going to build a better future, everyone should have a voice in designing it. As the sun set over the Helix facility, painting the mountains in shades of gold and amber, Amelia reflected on the journey from desperation to hope. They had faced the extinction of human civilization and had not only survived but created the foundation for a more resilient future. The zombie apocalypse was ending not with gunfire and explosions, but with carefully synthesized proteins and coordinated medical treatment. Humanity had proven that even in the face of impossible odds, science, determination, and cooperation could overcome any threat. But most importantly, they had learned that the true cure for any disaster, biological, technological, or otherwise, wasn't just scientific knowledge. It was the human capacity to work together, to adapt, to never give up hope, and to remember that even the infected, the lost, and the seemingly irredeemable could be brought back to the light. V0 had tried to end human civilization. Instead, it had shown humanity how strong they could become when they refused to surrender to despair. The last protocol had become the first chapter of recovery. And in laboratories around the world, the work continued.